Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Beldin. Today we're going to be painting a Tifa Lockhart. We're going to be doing a little soft spoken and some soft mic brushing here. This is my second ASMR video, so please let me know what you guys think, if this is something you'd like to see more of, or if you've just like a little music in the background. Anyways, we're gonna get right into this. We're painting a Tifa Lockhart here. She's from Final Fantasy. Here we're just applying a white base coat. I use a paint called Vallejo, if any of you are wondering. It's a paint I was recommended from a fellow YouTuber. I have mentioned this in a previous video for those of you who have watched. Now we're just jumping over and painting a simple basic black layer. I paint her feet and all her dark colored elements with a base of black, and all her skin tones and anything that's light with a nice white base. I record these videos at 4 times speed because there is over 4 hours of content. So I hope I've edited this down to a nice, concise video. With these models, I really like to give credit to the person who crafted them and made it possible for people like me and people like you to print these. A couple years ago, when I got my first 3D printer, I went online and I found a pack of 3D models to purchase. One of those models was a Final Fantasy figure of Tifa. And that's what we're painting now. So I purchased this some time ago, and the bundle didn't give credit to the creator of the model. I haven't purchased any more of those bundles, but I still have a few models to work through. Now I do subscribe to the creators of many of these models, so they actually led me to their web pages. So when I paint those models where the author is known, I will definitely give you all that information. So, now back to painting the base. I had a couple broken pieces, so I had to mold the foot of the stand we're painting here. I painted this a few different layers of brown, but ironically just ended with something very similar to what the filament looked like when we started. But I was still pleased with the end result. The large base I also printed with filament. I used some putty and some glue to seal them together. Those are a little harder to work with because you have to sand them with a much harder grit, and the plastic doesn't sand nearly as fine as resin. So I prefer my resin printer for fine, detailed figures. Only when the base or the pieces are exceptionally large or can't be split with clean lines. I dislike trying to sand pieces together, so I find the filament is a nice helper for those extra large pieces. Now we're painting her skin tones. You saw a moment there I was painting her underlays, just her basic skin and flesh tones. Now we have a very zoomed in close-up of some painting. We're moving on and painting her fingers here. One of her fingers broke off during the printing process, so I had to slowly mold one and paint it. If you can guess the right finger I made, I'll pin your comment. Now we're just doing some nice light touch-ups to her finger. Now we have her body. We are painting in her chest area, and now we're moving on and touching up her hair and just cleaning up some of those larger pieces. Even though we have done a nice black base, I'm coming in with a dark black matte paint and cleaning up any areas that have shadows that don't look right. I use a black base primer from Vallejo for my darker pieces here, and even though the base covers and looks good, for some reason my OCD kicks in and I have to go over them again with a coat of black standard paint. So that's what I'm doing. I now am going back to the glove. There is some orange highlighting that needs to be done to parts of her glove and some silver as well. The base of the sign is made with filament, so this one's hard to work with as well. Now we're painting her shoes. Her shoe is a dark red, almost a brick red. So I have done some masking to the base of her shoes and now doing a dark red base. Her shoes, I think, turned out well, but I did apply a very heavy layer of red, and that caused the paint to run a little. So, lesson learned, go slow, apply multiple thin layers. Don't make that mistake. Now, I ended up coming back after it dried and had to touch up the runs. So, it did just cause extra work in the end. I had to clean my airbrush a second time, mix that color a second time. Anyways, back to this. As you can see, I'm doing a little mixing here and getting ready for the next piece. I'm painting a little bit of her other shoe now and testing my paint color. Now we're just touching up her other shoe quickly and then back to painting her hand. We are doing some silver on the top of her gloves. This is for the metal pieces she has. One of them has what appears to be a couple pieces of materia. So we're going to highlight that and get that painted in here. We'll do a soft layer of gloss over top the metal and the materia to give it a bit of a shine and contrast to the arm gloves themselves. Now we're just touching up her fingernails, doing some highlights, and trying to bring her glove and arm to life. So very slow, meticulous painting is done here. I enjoy this part of the process. The pieces aren't too small, so they're still fun to paint. You can see that I pinned some of the braces in her arm guard, and I think they turned out well. Let me know what you think. Now we're just doing a little bit of touch up to her gloves and then moving on to her shoes finally. The piece is starting to come together. Everything now is just going to be very fine, small detail work. brush, brush, brush. Well, everyone, thank you for watching. We're at the halfway point now. I'm gonna try to whisper from here on out, kinda quietly, slowly, mellow everyone out. We can feel nice and at peace and resting. Hopefully everyone is enjoying the content and feeling a little bit either sleepy or inspired to paint. Either way, we're having fun and creating together, creating some nice peaceful sleep or some beautiful art. But I just wanted to take a moment and give my expressed gratitude to everyone for taking time to watch or listen. I really like painting and printing, and I hope I can share that joy with each and every one of you. That is my hope and my inspiration for creating this content. So I really just want us to be a community of creators. Anyways, I'm just talking about myself now. So, back to the painting. I'm using some silver and some red to clean up her shoes and paint the small buckles and paint her shoelaces, or I should say her boot laces. Boot, boot, boot laces. That brown piece that I'm painting on is a base for a Dungeons and Dragons monster. If any of you know of the Terrasque, I've heard some people call it the Tarrasque. I'm not sure. My D&D group and DM always called it the Terrasque, but either way, it's a massive, scary monster. I don't think many D&D groups survive the encounter, but I haven't used it. I just printed it just in case. I've been using it as a base to paint from, and it hopefully will give it some character if I ever have to use it in a D&D session. I now DM. My last DM handed me the something I struggle with. They are the window to the soul, after all, so they're a very important part of the model. I was surprised how having badly painted eyes can make your model go from beautiful to horrific. I am exaggerating a little bit, but you get the point. Now I'm just touching up her inside of her boots. Tifa has a white sole to her boots, so I am using my finger as a guard and slowly airbrushing the inside. You can see the white starting to come through. I believe I started with a tan base, and that's what I'm painting in her shoes first. But as I mentioned earlier, here is that brown that I'm painting her sign, very similar to the original filament that I used to print this with. The airbrush keeps knocking the sign over. It was a headache. I didn't want to smudge the paint with my glove, but did the best I could. Now I'm coming back in with the white that I mentioned earlier and finally finishing up her gloves. You can see the tan that I started with and the contrast between the white. It really makes it stand out. I was really pleased with how it looked. Now I'm coming back in with a Q-tip and a little bit of water, and removing some of the excess white paint that got on her boot. I covered the layers that I paint with a thin layer of gloss. This is why I can use the water to remove my mistakes. So this gives me some room to make mistakes without ruining the paint of the previous layer. It takes a little bit more time, but the end result looks better. And now we're moving in and finally doing the sign itself. It says, "Have a great day," and I hope you are having a great day. Each and every one of you have a wonderful day filled with joy, love, and peace. Or have a wonderful night filled with great, peaceful slumber. And now I'm moving up, and it's a little out of frame, but I'm currently painting the seventh heaven portion of her logo. B7 itself is done in black, and there's a light, thin layer that surrounds it that is blue, but my hand isn't that finely tuned, so I'm going to paint some of the detail around the 7 in that blue and fade out to some purple. sign. So I started to fit the pieces together to see where she was going to stand and where the sign would go. So that's what you saw me briefly doing with the base and the feet. I was very pleased with the turnout of the base. The sign and everything look good together, but we'll see that in a moment. For those of you still awake, thank you again for listening and watching. We are about done. We're finishing up the final pieces. I'm doing some highlights on the sign here, but as soon as this is done, we're gonna start to assemble the pieces and do the final results. I'm just putting in those purple leaves and doing the last couple touch-ups, but we've made it to the end. If you did like my soft-spoken, whispered ASMR style painting, then please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. Thank you everyone for watching, and here's the show.